Camp Winter breathed differently now, slower, tighter, like lungs filling with frost that wouldn't thaw. The wind off the river cut through the camp's tarp walls and rusted fencing like it had teeth. Smoke clung low over the courtyard, thick with the scent of boiled grain, diesel, and wet cloth. And silence, when it came, it stayed longer than it should have. Alex stirred under a stiff blanket, shoulder aching as he sat up. The cot creaked beneath him, its thin frame biting into his back. He flexed his fingers first and then moved his arm. The bandage May had wrapped 3 days ago was still there, tight, careful, no black veins, no fever. But the skin around the bite had turned a shade darker, and the ache was always waiting. May was already gone, again. He dressed quickly, slipping on his scavenged boots and jacket patched at the elbow with duct tape. The container they called home was colder inside than out. Frost crept in patterns across the corrugated steel walls, etching the metal with quiet warnings. Outside, Camp Winter was moving. Not fast, not loud, just the slow, relentless shuffle of survival. People hauled buckets of water from melted snow barrels. Others hunched over cooking fires or scrubbed gear with stiff brushes. The food line had formed an hour early. No one wanted to be the last one through anymore. Supplies were thinning. Rations were stricter, and more cots sat empty each morning. Griggs, the clipboard man, claimed it was flu, exposure, desertion. But Alex noticed how no one ever saw the bodies, and how no one ever asked. May sat cross-legged near the tool shed, sleeves rolled to her elbows, blackened hands busy rewiring a broken solar panel. She'd traded for the parts, half a spool of copper and a screwdriver dulled with use. The engineer, a man with half an ear and no patience, let her sit in on repairs now. He said nothing as she worked, but he always watched her hands closely. Her real skill, though, was listening. She'd mapped the camp in her head, who controlled the stew pots, who ran the radio shack, who disappeared after lights out. She watched how Rhea spoke only to 4 people directly, how the guards moved in pairs only at night, and how there were always 2 fewer than there had been the week before. The older teens were different, rougher, quieter. They hung near the old shipping dock, whittling wood into shapes, some crude, some delicate. When she passed them today, one boy with a shaved head and cracked glasses was carving a circle into a piece of driftwood. Not a perfect one, more like a spiral, over and over. May paused beside him. "What is it?" she asked quietly. He didn't look up. "Don't know. Just feels right." She moved on. That night, the wind rose. Alex lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. The light bulb overhead flickered and gave out. Only a sliver of moonlight through the curtain let him see. May sat near the entrance, arms folded, her breath clouding faintly in the cold. Then he heard it again, a low hum. Not mechanical, not wind. It came from the back wall of the container, dull and rhythmic. Almost like a voice, but buried deep, pressed beneath layers of insulation and time. He shifted upright, muscles flaring. "May," he whispered. "You hear that?" She didn't move. No, not tonight. He let the silence stretch, but it never felt empty, just hidden. Later, as he bent down to adjust his cot, his fingers brushed something rough beneath the frame. He grabbed his flashlight, shielding the beam with his palm, and traced the marks with the tip of the light. Scratches. Dozens of them, all arcing in faint circles, like someone had been crawling beneath and turning, dragging something, or themselves in tight, mindless loops. Alex didn't tell May. He just pushed his cot half a foot away from the wall and didn't sleep. Morning didn't come with sunlight anymore. Just a brighter shade of gray. May handed Alex a piece of bread, not fresh, not clean, but edible. He took it, chewing slowly as they sat outside the mess tent. A fire crackled nearby in a metal drum, its heat mostly lost to the wind. "Griggs says we'll be moved soon," she said. "To where?" "Sector 5. Alex frowned. "Isn't that the quarantine zone?" "No, that's Sector 2. Sector 5 is storage, food prep, dry goods, better or worse." May stared at the wall of the chapel tent across from them, where a tarp had been drawn tight against the wind. From behind it came the muffled sound of something shifting. Footsteps, or something like it. "Ask me in a week." They sat in silence. A few feet away, 2 guards spoke in hushed tones. One of them laughed, short, barking. The other pointed toward the generator shack, where a new coil of cables had been dragged in overnight. Alex followed their gaze. The wire trailed into the chapel tent. No one said what for. That evening, a girl went missing. May heard it from a kitchen worker, someone she traded with for dried beans. The girl's name was Carly, 12, last seen hauling firewood. Griggs said she probably wandered into the woods. But the woods were frozen. No one wandered there. That night, May found herself watching the old boy again. The one carving wood. He had stopped carving. Now he just sat. When he saw her, he whispered, "I keep seeing it, in my dreams, a circle, but it's not closed. It just keeps going." May said nothing, just turned and walked back toward their container. When she got there, Alex had already bolted the door from inside. He looked up from his cot, eyes darker than the night outside. "They're lying," he said. She nodded. "I know. They didn't say more. Didn't mention the scratches, the spiral carvings, the girl, the hum. They just curled under the blanket, shoulder to shoulder, and listened to the wind scrape the outer walls." May closed her eyes and told herself it was just the wind. Snow fell in half-melted clumps, fat and slow, clinging to every surface like it meant to stay. Alex pushed his shovel through the slush along the north perimeter fence, his gloves soaked and fingers numb. Each step left a hollow crunch behind him, quickly filled in by the next drift of gray-white. His breath fogged in steady bursts as he scanned the horizon. Concrete, wire, ash, nothing new. He hated perimeter duty, not because of the cold, but because it meant standing still long enough to hear things. The wind, the creak of metal, the quiet clicks of frozen bones shifting near the tree line. Nothing visible, but always something out there. Behind him, the camp moved like a dying heart. Slow, labored, rhythmic. Fires crackled in half-barrels. Tarps snapped weakly in the wind. The sky hung low and colorless. May, meanwhile, was elbows deep in the scrapyard, surrounded by gutted electronics and rusted appliances. She worked beside an old woman named Callie, who smelled like burnt oil and vinegar. Their task was simple: strip usable wire, separate copper from junk, and don't ask questions. That was the first unspoken rule of Camp Winter. Don't ask questions. The second was more practical. Work or you don't eat. By the third day of their new assignments, May was already working faster than the others. Quieter, too. Her hands moved with purpose, and her eyes saw everything. The people who showed up late, the ones who never came back, the crates marked for batch storage that were wheeled off-site by guards who never wore names. That's when they met Rain. Rain arrived at the scrapyard with a bag full of burned-out radios and one arm. Her coat sleeve was pinned to the shoulder with a rusted screw. She wore goggles on her head, a crescent scar across her temple, and a smile that didn't match the cold in her voice. "You're new," she said to May, dropping her load with a wet thump. "Not dumb. I like that." May didn't answer at first. Rain didn't mind. "Alex, right?" she said later, cornering him during his ration break. "And May, you two aren't from any of the known camps, which means you got here on your own. That's rare." Alex narrowed his eyes. "You watching us?" "Everyone watches everyone here," she said, "but most people are too scared to see anything." She leaned against the perimeter railing, her breath rising in ribbons. "Let me guess. You think this place is a miracle. Fire, food, fences." Alex didn't respond. Rain smirked. "It's not. It's a pressure cooker. This place is running on borrowed time and spoiled math. They say 20 days of rations left, but that was 3 weeks ago. We're down to 11, maybe 9. Alex watched her. "How do you know that?" "I used to count trucks." Later that night, Rain found them behind the tool shack, huddled under a broken canopy near the waste burner. "There's a second gate," she whispered. May's eyes lifted sharply. "Where?" "Not on the wall. Below it. Transit tunnel under the old train yard. Sealed since year 1, but I found a way in. Problem is, the only way through the collapse is with 3 people. Someone has to wedge the manual lift while the others crawl." "And then what?" Alex asked. "Then we're out. Beyond the search perimeter. If we keep low and fast, we can reach the river. From there, maybe a skiff. Maybe nothing." "Why us?" May asked. Rain's mouth twitched. "Because everyone else is too scared to go. And I've seen the way you both move. You think ahead. You don't freeze." "That's rare." Alex looked to May. She gave a slow nod. "Stealing the supplies took 3 nights. May handled the storeroom. She memorized the watch rotation, waited until Grig's nephew was asleep, and used a length of wire to loop the latch open. Inside, she took only what was needed: antibiotics, 2 packs of water tablets, and an old travel bag to carry them. No flour, no canned beans. Nothing that would be missed right away." Alex lifted the map from the council trailer. The binder had been tucked in a side shelf behind a curtain of thermal blankets. While he scrubbed floors during morning cleanup, he slipped in, slid the binder into his coat, and walked out like he belonged there. The map was old, printed on thick laminate, stained at the edges. It showed the camp perimeter, sewer routes, and buried infrastructure. Rain traced her finger to the edge of the map, southwest corner. "Here," she said. "The tunnel collapse, just past the burned bridge." One page had notes scrawled in red ink: supply figures, dead zones, patrol routes. And in the corner, faint, nearly invisible beneath the ink, bleed a spiral, not drawn. Printed. May stared at it. "You good?" Rain asked. May blinked. "Yeah. Just tired." They didn't talk about it after that. 2 days later, May and Alex sat near the campfire in the assembly lot. Snow still fell. The flames hissed as it landed on burning wood. "We go tomorrow night," Rain whispered. "After the generator resets. 2-minute window. Anyone else know?" Alex asked. Rain shook her head. "Only ghosts." May clutched the bag tighter. Inside gauze, matches, and the old photograph of her family folded between 2 ration bars. Alex watched the way her eyes drifted to the shadows. Not with fear, but calculation. He reached out and touched her sleeve. "We'll make it." She didn't smile, just nodded once. "I know." Around them, the camp settled into its nightly rhythms. Pot lids clanged, tarps shifted, and quiet voices whispered near the chapel tent. In the distance, a soft chant rose and fell like breath against frost. They didn't look toward it, didn't need to. They just watched the snow, and waited for the dark to come. The blackout lasted 1 minute and 39 seconds, long enough for the searchlights to stall, long enough for the alarms to flicker silent, long enough for Alex, May, and Rain to slip beneath the drainage gate and vanish into the frost-hardened dark. They moved fast and low, shoulders brushing damp concrete, boots crunching through runoff ice. Rain led, hunched and swift despite the weight of her pack. May followed tight behind, carrying most of their stolen gear. Alex took the rear, watching the fence line shrink behind them with every breath. No one called out. No shots fired, but they didn't slow. They emerged through a rusted grate, half sunk in mud at the base of the outer wall. Beyond it, the city opened like a frozen wound, jagged rooftops rising from banks of ash and snow, windows black with shadow, air thick with chemical cold. Street lamps leaned at broken angles. Trees grew sideways from cracked sidewalks. Everything was quieter than it should have been. May glanced back once. No pursuit. Rain exhaled, her one good hand flexing around the grip of a small hammer. Not yet. By midday, they were knee-deep in the old residential district. Snow fell in wet sheets, coating rusted cars and collapsed balconies. The deeper they moved, the more still everything became. Not calm. Dead still. On one corner, an apartment tower leaned like a broken tooth. They climbed 5 stories looking for food, or a better vantage, only to hear the stairs collapse behind them. They froze. The sound echoed like thunder through the empty city. Dust swirled in the shafts of cold light from above. May pressed her back against a cracked hallway wall, breathing fast. Alex held his machete tight, knuckles pale. Rain didn't speak, just stared at the hole in the floor behind them. "We keep moving," she said. No one argued. The infected came an hour later. Not moaning, not screaming, just appearing. Out of alleys, from beneath wreckage, moving on all fours, faster than anything had a right to. Their skin was blackened by cold. Their mouths opened too wide. No growls, no breath, only speed. The group fled through the skeletal remains of a bank, kicking over chairs and ducking broken marble columns. May slipped once. Rain hauled her up without a word. Alex swung at one when it came too close, blade catching its collar and twisting the neck with a crack. Still it crawled. They darted through an intersection and into an old museum. The doors were already shattered, banners tattered and flapping like ghosts in the wind. Inside, mannequins stood posed mid-stride, mid-expression, scattered between dead exhibits of war and commerce. May hesitated. This place feels... Another infected burst through the skylight above, limbs flailing as it fell hard beside her. She screamed and stumbled. The thing scrambled upright in a blur. Alex moved without thinking. The machete hit bone, once, twice, then silence. Just mannequins. Just breath. And then, a voice. "May?" She turned. A man stood in the far archway. Not infected, not wild, wearing camp winter armor, pistol drawn. "I don't want to shoot you," he said, "but I can't let you go." His eyes flicked to Alex, then to Rain. "You don't understand what you've done," he said. May stepped forward. "You don't understand what you're still part of." The man's mouth opened. He looked tired, cold. May shot him. It was Rain's pistol, but May had asked to carry it, just in case. One pull. Center mass. The guard dropped to his knees, mouth slack with surprise, then to the floor. She stood there, arms shaking. Alex touched her elbow. "May." "I know," she whispered. "Keep moving." They crossed a frozen courtyard behind a grocery store. The air felt wrong there. Heavy, like breath caught in a throat. Rain stepped on the trap without seeing it. The snap echoed through the ruins like a gunshot. She collapsed, screaming once before biting it down. Blood soaked her pants instantly. Metal teeth had crushed her calf. Alex pried the jaws open with a bent crowbar. May wrapped the leg as fast as she could, tearing up a coat to pack the wound. "We need to stop," May said, voice low. Rain shook her head. "No, we don't. You're bleeding out. We're too close." Her eyes burned, not from pain, but from purpose. She pulled herself upright with a groan, leaning on Alex. 1 mile south, she hissed. tunnel mouth. We make that, we disappear, May nodded slowly. Alex looped reins, arm over his shoulder. They moved again, slower now. Each step careful, silent. The city creaked and whispered around them. Windows settling, pipes moaning, the quiet scurry of something not quite animal overhead. None of them looked back. Not anymore. She worked in silence. Unrolled the last of the medical tape. Cleaned the wound with water melted from snow in an old tin can. Wrapped it tight. Alex winced but didn't complain. His eyes were cloudy, face pale. "I'm fine," he whispered. "You're not," she said. But she didn't cry. She hadn't cried in weeks, not when the tower stairs collapsed, not when she killed that man. Not even when Rain screamed into her coat after the trap snapped shut. She just kept moving, one task at a time. Alex leaned his head against the stone wall. "Tell me something good." May paused. "Then, the river's not frozen all the way through. I saw water moving. Still flowing, huh? Still trying." That night, she woke to cold air on her face. Rain was gone. The fire had burned low, casting long, dying shadows. May sat up fast, scanning the chapel. No sounds, no coughing, just emptiness. A note sat where Rain had slept. Scrawled in charcoal on a piece of wrapper paper. "You deserve a shot at something better. I can't be the thing that cost you that. Keep going, Rain." Beside it, half a protein bar, still wrapped. May stood slowly, pulled on her coat, and stepped out into the night. She followed the prints in the snow, down to the river. They ended at the bank. The ice was cracked there, just enough. A single boot print near the edge. And then nothing. She stood for a long time. The wind cut across the water, sharp and endless. No sign of her. No trace but snow already starting to cover the trail. Eventually, May turned back. The next morning was bright in that awful, colorless way. Light without warmth, hope without promise. Alex was worse. He hadn't moved much. Fever pulsed under his skin again. She fed him half the bar Rain left. He chewed slowly, jaw tight. "She's gone?" he asked. May nodded. She didn't want to slow us down. She didn't. May didn't reply. They sat in the chapel doorway as the snow thickened. Across the river, through the trees, a shape loomed. An old transmission tower, or maybe a silo. Barely visible through the haze, May pulled out the crumpled map Rain had marked. There it was. Final destination. Circled with a shaky hand and labeled only maybe. Alex looked at it for a long time. "We could stay," he said. "Wait out the cold. Maybe scavenge more." May didn't answer. "You don't have to go," he added. "Not if you're alone." She turned to him. "I'm not." He blinked. May folded the map, tucked it into her jacket, and stood. "You're not dying here, not if I can help it." He tried to sit up. Failed. "If we leave and I collapse, I'll carry you," she said. No doubt. No drama, just truth. Outside, the wind shifted again. They packed what little remained. May made a sling for Alex's arm and tightened the straps on her coat. She tied Rain's knife to her belt, the spiral symbol on the blade's hilt worn nearly flat. They stepped out into the pale world, toward the river, toward the unknown. Not because it was safe, but because it was forward. Because it was something. The wind had softened by morning, but the cold had deepened, settling into bone and breath. Snow clung to Alex's shoulders like a burial shroud, powdering his hair, caking in the folds of his coat. He leaned heavily on May now, every step more a negotiation than motion. His arm hung limp, bandaged tight beneath his jacket, but the wound still seeped. Each breath came shallow, but he moved, because she did. May said nothing as they crossed the river. The bridge was an old freight rail, metal ribs bent and rusted with age, its planks frozen slick beneath a glaze of ice and ash. The river below was a dark ribbon veiled in steam, groaning now and then as the current shifted under the crust. Fog hugged the shoreline, thick as wool, swallowing the world 1 yard at a time. Behind them, the chapel stood in silhouette, twisted beams, shattered glass, the crooked tower still rising through the storm like a jagged tooth. Then, without sound, the roof gave, just a slow, sagging collapse as the weight of snow proved too much. Wood splintered inward. The tower folded like paper, and the chapel was gone. May didn't turn. Neither did Alex. They just kept walking. The bridge creaked beneath them, wind threading through the twisted supports, a quiet moan that felt too much like voices. May gripped Alex tighter, his weight a growing anchor against her frame. But she didn't slow. The fog thickened. Beyond the bridge, the land opened into a frozen road lined with skeletal trees, and old power lines that swayed like metronomes of a forgotten world. Everything was still, muffled by frost. The snow no longer fell from above. It drifted from branches and ruined rooftops like ash disturbed by memory. Then they saw it. A billboard, tilting at the edge of the road, its frame bent by time and storms. The image was almost gone, peeling, sun-bleached. A woman's face cracked through the eyes, stared out with a distant smile, the remains of a public service message faded across her cheeks. Are you listening? The letters were warped but legible. In the bottom corner, nearly obscured by rust and grime, a spiral had been painted long ago. Faded, thin, like it had bled into the sign itself. May saw it, registered it, but said nothing. She kept walking, so did Alex. Step after step, breath after breath, into the fog. They didn't know what waited beyond the haze. Didn't know if the next camp was real, or if the road would vanish beneath them. But they weren't turning back, and sometimes that was enough.